Okay, here we go. Take one. Okay, so today, right now here in this I'm going to explain a little bit about the differences between our three top Funformance boards. The new one, the White Tiger, we have the Gremlin, and then also we have the Astro, which is a super fun board too, which has kind of been forgotten lately. Everybody's been asking me about the difference between the Gremlin and the White Tiger. That's the biggest questions we have. And so basically, I just want to illustrate things. The Gremlin is our version that we shrunk down like the old. We kind of went from like a ghost down to a shadow, down to a phantom, and then we got the Gremlins. The Gremlin's a beefy, squished down kind of version of like the phantom. So it's got a wider nose, it's got a wider tail, it's got a real clean, long outline, and it's girthy. Like it's got a lot of beef in the rail. And it's a chunky board. When you pick it up, you feel chunky. But it also has a pointy nose, like it's a kind of a pulled-in nose still. It's wider, but it's still kind of more of a shortboardy looking kind of nose. And then the tail block itself especially is kind of pulled in as well. The board has, compared to the White Tiger, there's a little more nose rocker overall here. It has a little bit of flip through the entry. And then the tail rocker, it has actually a lot more tail rocker than the White Tiger. The White Tiger's a lot flatter through the tail. This board's pretty thin. The Gremlin's pretty thin through the tail as well. And the wide point, although it is a little bit forward, it's not as forward as the White Tiger is. The Gremlin is kind of like a daily driver kind of board, but like squished down even more to be more of like a groveler, Funformance kind of thing, where you can still kind of go up and down with it because the nose isn't super wide and it has some curve. It lets you go up, surf a little more vertical, but it also still has enough girth and planing area that it keeps you moving in the water when it's kind of weak and smaller. This is the White Tiger, and this has a lot more width in the nose. It still has a pointy nose, not a rounded nose, but it's a lot fuller through this area than the Gremlin is. And then it also has, it's not a lot wider through the actual tail in the middle of the board, but as you get into the tail block, this part of the board itself is a lot wider in the very end of the board, so you have a big, wide, fat tail block. It also has a little beak nose and a lot flatter entry rocker. The best way to describe this, really, is that this board is essentially, it's essentially a fish, but with a squash tail. Like if you see this board with a swallowtail on it, you're gonna think fish. Whereas with the Gremlin, when you see that board with a swallowtail, it's more verging towards like a daily driver kind of board than it is a fishy kind of board. This thing's definitely way more fishy. This board has, the White Tiger has less tail rocker than the Gremlin does by quite a bit. The wide point of it is pushed a little bit more forward even than the Gremlin is. And then it has a lot less entry rocker as well. And then the biggest difference in the bottoms on these two, they both have similar double concaves through them with a little bit of V off the tail on the Gremlin, but this board has a way more exaggerated hump of like double concave and V, and then a deep V running off the tail of it, which gives it a lot of like a smooth transition through turns, which helps it because it has such a flat rocker that if adding that V kind of lets it tip through turns a lot better. Whereas this board doesn't have as much V, but it has more curve through the tail overall, that helps it tip through the thing. The other difference between these two rockers, like I said before about the Gremlin, is that the Gremlin is going to fit into a tighter pocket wave with more like up and down surfing than the White Tiger will in general. Unless you're riding the White Tiger really short, which is recommended. The way people ask me about boards lengthwise, someone was asking the other day, like how short or how big a board should you ride, how small a board can you ride with these designs, and it really comes down to the surfer and the surfing ability, where like a top pro surfer is going to ride a board that's way smaller than them, like maybe even up to like 6 inches. Like Jon rides a 5'6" and he's 6'2", so he's riding a board that's 8 inches shorter than him. And then like a real average surfer or a middle ground surfer might want to ride it around their same height kind of. and then somebody that is more of a novice surfer or transitioning more into shortboards or whatever from something else might want to ride this even a fair bit bigger than them and girthy, and it's a great like kind of starter small board too, you know. Both of these are. I've been making Jon's boards for 20 something years, and he's rarely ever ridden a board that's outside of just like performance oriented, either like big waves or just every kind of performance kind of surfing. That's what he likes to do the most. So when he finally just pulled this thing out of his garage and went and rode it, it was honestly one of the first times where he was really riding like a fun board instead of a performance board. And that's where he got so stoked on it, and he was just tripping out on how easy it was to go fast, right? So, talked about the Gremlin, talked about the White Tiger. The other board that's in our Funformance little world is the Astro. And this board, everybody kind of wonders where this falls in between those things, and I would put it somewhere in the middle between those two, not to confuse things too much, but the Astro definitely has like a fishiness to it, for sure, but it's a little more pulled in the nose than the White Tiger, and it's got just a different curve to it in the bottom. It's super fast. It has a nice looseness to it, but at the same time, it's really drivey and quick. So it keeps the speed up really good, but it's a lot more refined than either of these two boards overall. Like it's a little bit thinner through everywhere, and just a little more bladey kind of feeling than each of these. The tail, as you can see with this little wing, it pulls in the tail quite a bit, so it's a narrower tail, which is nice, but you have this width and straight spot. It's straight through here, which gives it like a lot of spicy speed, but then that little tail helps you kind of get up into the lip on it a little bit more too, which is cool. So a lot of times people are saying like, hey, which one's better for which waves or whatever, right? And the thing with surfboards is that there's not necessarily like, these all overlap, right? Like you could ride any of these boards in any waves, really, depending on your ability. And then also you could specifically say like a waist high wave this big that's mushy and kind of weak, which one is better? And like they're all gonna suit that wave really well. They just have different feels to them, and it's hard for me personally to put that into words. But basically what I would say is like from the Gremlin to the Astro to the White Tiger, those are like, the Gremlins are the closest to like the high performance end of those boards, like or like a daily driver. And then the Astro falls kind of in the middle, and the White Tiger I feel like is going to be your very best bet for like little shitty, weak, little like feeble little waves, you know? At the same time, these boards work good. Like I've seen Jon ride this board, this White Tiger, in like pumping waves this big that are barreling and just rippable, and surfs insane on it. So it's just a matter of like how you want to approach it and what you want to do. As far as waves go for these boards, like when we made this board in particular, the White Tiger, and actually all three of these boards were made with like smaller, weaker waves in mind, right? And that's not to say they won't work great in good waves. I've ridden all three of these boards in really good waves, and they're really fun. But ideally, what we wanted to do was get people to be able to go fast, see a wave this big that's not that good, and be like, hey, I'm stoked, I'm gonna go surf. Or something even this big that's really slow, or whatever it is. These kind of boards are really gonna help you glide through all that kind of stuff and really like make the most out of those kind of like just weaker conditions overall. It's not necessarily related to the size of the wave so much as the power of the wave. I would say as far as like choosing these boards too, the hollower the wave, I would go with the Gremlin. The flatter the wave, I would go more towards the White Tiger. And then the Astro falls somewhere in the middle there too. You know, like the Gremlin still has enough curve in it that it'll help in like a little bit later drops and like a punchier little beach break that maybe the takeoff's kind of steep and then it kind of backs off. I would choose a Gremlin. If I'm taking off on waves where I can get in early and easier, and then it's kind of slow or whatever it is, I would choose a White Tiger. And both somewhere down the middle, I would choose this board. Or for either end of that, it pretty much works depending on how long you ride it, how long out of the board is. This thing's just so fun.